Hello, everyone. This channel is about real stories. Enjoy listening.
Part 1. The beginning. I never thought my marriage would end in divorce. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you that Sarah and I were solid, that we were one of those couples who would grow old together. At least, that's what I believed. The truth is, most people don't realize that marriages rarely collapse in one explosive moment. More often, it's like water wearing away at stone-teeny cracks. Subtle shifts, things you barely notice until one day you look up and realize the foundation is gone. Sarah and I met in college. I was 20, she was 19. She had this contagious laugh, the kind that filled a room. She wasn't the kind of woman who demanded attention. She just had this way of drawing people in without even trying. We got together young, and in many ways, we grew up together. Our 20s were filled with late nights, cheap wine, endless conversations about dreams and ambitions. We married in our late 20s, bought a small house, and built a life that I thought was happy, ordinary, and safe. But safety, I've learned, can be deceptive at first. The changes were almost invisible. Sarah started coming home later than usual, she said. Work was demanding more from her, and I believed her. She worked in marketing, and deadlines were always chaotic. I told myself that her exhaustion, her irritability, her constant scrolling on her phone, those were just side effects of stress. I didn't want to imagine anything else. Then there were the small moments, times when I'd be talking to her and realize she wasn't really listening. The way she'd look at me, not with the warmth I had known for years, but with a kind of distance. I started to feel like a roommate instead of a husband. I can't pinpoint the exact day it happened, but there was a shift, subtle and quiet, like the air before a storm. One evening, I came home early from work. Sarah wasn't expecting me. I walked into the living room, and she quickly locked her phone, placing it face down on the couch. It was such a small action, but something inside me stirred. She smiled, too quickly, too forced, and asked me how my day was. I told her about a frustrating client, but she barely responded. Her mind was somewhere else. That night, when she went to shower, I glanced at her phone. It was locked, of course, and I didn't have the password. That was new. For years, we had known each other's passcodes, not because we snooped, but because there was never anything to hide. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I lay awake beside her, listening to the sound of the shower running. My stomach twisted in knots. Weeks passed, and the distance grew. I told myself it was my imagination, that marriages go through phases, that stress can pull people apart temporarily. I tried to be more attentive. I cooked dinner. I asked about her day. I even suggested we take a weekend trip together. She said she was too busy. Always too busy. The loneliness was the hardest part. To lie next to someone you've loved for over a decade and feel invisible, it's a kind of pain I can't fully explain. One night, while I was doing the dishes, Sarah's phone buzzed on the counter. A message lit up the screen. I couldn't see the content, just a name. Daniel. My heart stopped. Daniel wasn't a name I recognized. I picked up the phone, but it was locked. Again, that wall between us. She walked in moments later, saw me holding it, and her face went pale. She snatched it from my hand without a word. That silence told me more than any explanation could. Later, when I asked her who Daniel was, she brushed it off. Just a coworker, she said. Her tone was sharp, defensive, like I had accused her of a crime. She changed the subject quickly, turning the conversation into a fight about trust. Somehow, I was the one made to feel guilty for picking up her phone, for even questioning her. That night, I slept on the couch. I wish I could say that was the moment. I knew the marriage was over, but it wasn't. Hope is stubborn. Love is stubborn. I clung to the idea that this was just a rough patch, that if I tried harder, if I was more patient, we could fix it. But deep down, something had already broken. Part 2, Cracks in the Foundation. The days that followed felt like I was living in two different realities. On the surface, Sarah and I were still married, two people, sharing a house, a kitchen, a bed. But beneath it, there was an undercurrent of tension, like a low hum you can't turn off. We ate dinner together, but the conversations were shallow, mechanical. I asked about her day. She gave short answers. She asked about mine, but her eyes stayed glued to her phone. I started noticing things I had ignored before. She guarded her phone like it was made of glass. She took it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, even when she showered. At night, she turned it face down on the nightstand. She had never done that before. I told myself I was paranoid, but in my gut, I knew. There were more late nights at the office. She'd text me at 7 or 8, saying she had to stay late for a campaign deadline. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But when she came home, sometimes near midnight, her clothes smelled faintly of cologne. Not perfume-cologne. I tried to bring it up gently. Hey, I said one evening, as we sat in the living room. You've been working late a lot lately. Is everything okay? She sighed, irritated. It's work, James. I told you. Why do you keep asking me the same thing? I'm just worried, I said. You seem distant lately. Maybe I wouldn't seem distant if you stopped interrogating me every time I walk in the door. Her words cut deeper than she realized. I wasn't interrogating her, in my own clumsy way, to let me back in, but she didn't see it that way. Or maybe she didn't want to. A week later, I suggested again that we take a trip together. Just a weekend, I said. Let's get away from work, from everything. Just us. She shook her head immediately. I can't. There's too much going on at the office. And honestly, I don't think that's what we need right now. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me, and felt the crushing weight of the distance between us. It was like sharing a bed with a stranger. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. It was a Friday evening. I had left work early, determined to do something nice, something that might remind us of what we used to have. I cooked dinner, her favorite pasta, a bottle of red wine we'd been saving. I lit candles. For the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful, but Sarah didn't come home. I waited. 7 o'clock turned to 8, then 9. I called her. No answer. I texted. No response. At 11, the food was cold, the wine unopened. She walked through the door just past midnight, laughing at something on her phone. When she saw me sitting at the table, her smile faded. You're still up? She asked. Where were you? My voice was calm. Too calm. I told you. Work. Until midnight. On a Friday. She rolled her eyes. Yes, James. Not everyone clocks out at 5. I looked at her, Ellie. Looked at her. Her hair was a little messy, her lipstick slightly smudged, and again, that faint trace of cologne clung to her clothes. My stomach turned. Who is he? I asked quietly. Her face went blank. Excuse me. Don't insult me, Sarah. Who is he? For a moment, she just stared at me. Her lips parted, like she couldn't decide whether to deny it or confess. Then she shook her head. You're paranoid. This is exactly why I don't tell you things. You blow everything out of proportion. I felt anger rise in me, hot and sharp. Out of proportion. I'm sitting here waiting for you all night, while you're out God knows where, and I'm supposed to believe it's just work. She slammed her purse onto the counter. You don't own me, James. I don't need to report my every move to you. The words hit like a slap. For years, we had been partners. I never thought of it as owning high, thought of it as sharing a life. But clearly, she no longer saw it that way. That night, we had our first real fight. Voices raised, accusations thrown, tears shed. At one point, I yelled, I just want the truth, Sarah. If you're seeing someone else, just say it. But she never did. She stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door, leaving me standing in the kitchen surrounded by cold pasta and untouched wine. I slept on the couch again in the days that followed. Things only got worse. We barely spoke. When we did, it was clipped, sharp, transactional. The warmth was gone. The trust was gone. And though she still hadn't admitted anything, I knew. It's strange, the way the mind works. Even when the evidence piles up, you still cling to the possibility that you're wrong. I told myself maybe it really was just work. Maybe I was being insecure. Maybe if I stopped pushing, things would get better. But in my heart, I already knew the truth. I was losing her. Part 3. The truth. The moment of truth didn't come with a dramatic revelation or a screaming confession. It came quietly, on an ordinary Tuesday night. The kind of night you'd never expect to remember for the rest of your life. Sarah was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, screen lighting up in the dim room. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it, but after weeks of suspicion, coldness, and lies, my hands moved before I could stop myself. The message flashed on the screen. Daniel, I miss you already. Last night was perfect. My chest tightened. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hands shook as I stared at the words, etched into my mind like a scar. Any shred of denial I had been clinging to crumbled in that instant. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. Those few words were enough. When Sarah came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, she froze the moment she saw me sitting there, her phone in my hand. I looked up at her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm, not angry, not paranoid, just calm in the way a man feels when the storm has already destroyed the house, and there's nothing left to protect. Daniel, I said quietly, is that who you've been with? She swallowed, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came out. She glanced at the phone, then back at me. Her silence was louder than any confession. How long? I asked, her eyes filled with tears. James, how long? My voice was steady, even though my heart felt like it was splitting in two. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her shoulders trembling. A few months, the words cut through me, sharp and merciless. I had suspected it 4 weeks, but hearing it a few months was like being stabbed straight through the chest. Why? I whispered. She shook her head. I don't know. I didn't plan it. It just happened. It just happened. My voice cracked. Sarah, we've built a life together. 15 years. And you throw it away because something just happened? Tears streamed down her face. I didn't mean to hurt you. I laughed bitterly, a hollow sound. You didn't mean to hurt me. You've been lying to me every single day, looking me in the eye and telling me it's just work, making me feel like I was crazy for even asking. That's not an accident, Sarah. That's a choice. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing, quietly. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built my life around, and I realized she was already gone. Something inside me broke that night. Not just my trust in her, but the illusion I had been living in that our marriage could still be saved if I tried hard enough, if I was patient enough, if I loved her enough. The truth was, she had already left me months ago. I was just too blind to see it. I stood up, set her phone down on the nightstand, and said the words I never thought I'd say: I want a divorce. Her sobbing stopped instantly. She looked up at me, shocked. James, no, please, don't say that. We can work through this, I snapped. You've been sleeping with another man for months, lying to me, betraying me, making me feel like I was insane for noticing. There's no working through that. She reached for me, but I stepped back. For the first time in years, I felt like I had to protect myself from her that night. I packed a bag and slept at a motel. The silence of the room was suffocating, but it was also freeing in a strange way. For the first time in months, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to wonder. The truth was out, and as painful as it was also a relief. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Divorce is not just the end of a marriage, it's the dismantling of an entire identity. Friends we shared didn't know how to react. Some sided with me, others with her. The house felt like a battlefield of memories, every photo on the wall, every mug in the cupboard, a reminder of what we had lost. We sat in a lawyer's office one gray morning, signing papers that would officially end 15 years together. Sarah cried through most of it. I didn't. My tears had already been spent in countless sleepless nights. When it was over, I walked out into the cold air and felt strangely numb. It didn't feel real. It felt like stepping off a cliff and expecting to keep falling, only to realize you've already hit the ground. The nights were the worst. Lying in an empty bed, haunted by memories of her laugh, her touch, the way she used to curl up beside me. I'd wake up reaching for her, only to find nothing but cold sheets. But even in the darkness, there was a part of me that knew this was necessary, that no matter how much it hurt, staying in that marriage would have destroyed me. Part 4. Aftermath and Renewal. The first few months after the divorce felt like moving through fog. Everything familiar was gone out, routines, our shared space, even the sound of her footsteps in the hallway. The silence of the house was deafening. I tried filling it with music, with television, with anything that could drown out the echo of what used to be. But no matter what I did, the emptiness lingered. People say time heals, but they don't tell you about the in-between, the nights when you wake up at 3 in the morning, heart racing, reaching for someone who isn't there. Or the mornings when you stare at your reflection, wondering who you even are without the identity of husband, partner, protector. Friends tried to help. They invited me out, encouraged me to move on, to get back out there. But I wasn't ready. Dating felt impossible. I wasn't even sure I remembered how to connect with someone without the baggage of betrayal weighing me down. Instead, I spent a lot of time alone. I went on long walks through the city, watching strangers laugh and live as if the world hadn't crumbled. Sometimes, I envied them. Other times, I found a strange comfort in knowing life went on, that even my shattered world couldn't stop time. The hardest part was letting go of the anger. It sat inside me like a fire, burning through every thought. Anger at Sarah, anger at Daniel, anger at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. For weeks, I replayed every conversation, every moment, wondering what I could have done differently. But the truth is, you can't rewrite the past. You can only choose what to carry with you. I started journaling, writing down everything I felt, the rage, the sorrow, the memories I wished I could erase. Some nights I'd fill page after page until my hand cramped. Strangely, it helped. Seeing the words on paper made the chaos in my head feel a little less overwhelming. Therapy was another step I hadn't expected to take, but it became a lifeline. Sitting in that office, talking about my pain, felt vulnerable and uncomfortable at first. But slowly, I began to untangle the knots inside me. I learned that Sarah's choices were not a reflection of my worth, but of her own struggles, her own emptiness. That realization didn't erase the hurt, but it gave me permission to stop blaming myself. Months passed. The pain dulled, though it never fully disappeared. It became a scar, something that would always be part of me, but no longer an open wound. I remember one evening, about 6 months after the divorce, sitting on a park bench watching the sunset. The sky was painted in streaks of orange and pink, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Not happy, not yet, but calm. The kind of calm that whispers, "You survived." I started rebuilding my life, piece by piece. I focused on work, on friendships I had neglected, on hobbies I had abandoned. I picked up my guitar again, something I hadn't touched in years. Music poured out of me, raw and unpolished, but it was mine. I went hiking, traveled to places I'd always said I'd visit someday. Slowly, the future began to feel less like a void and more like an open road. And then, unexpectedly, I met someone. Not in a dramatic, cinematic way, no whirlwind, romance or love at first sight. Just a casual introduction through a friend. A conversation over coffee that stretched longer than either of us expected. Her name was Emily. She was kind, patient, and she listened in a way that reminded me of how I used to feel before everything broke. I was hesitant at first, afraid of repeating old mistakes, afraid of being vulnerable again. But Emily never rushed me. She let me take my time, let me set the pace. With her, I learned that love doesn't have to be all-consuming or painful. It can be gentle. It can feel safe. Looking back now, I don't see my divorce as just an ending. It was also a beginning, a brutal, heartbreaking beginning. But a beginning nonetheless. I lost the woman I thought I would spend my life with, but I found something else myself. I learned that I could survive betrayal, that I could rebuild from ashes, that I could carry scars and still move forward. Divorce changed me. It broke me, but it also forced me to grow in ways I never would have otherwise. And, though I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, I can say this: sometimes the hardest endings are the ones that set us free.